Hey there everyone, and welcome to the start of the Knight build series. This is following on from my series which I did with both Wizard and Archer over the last few months. I finally got to the Knight series, and it's been awaited by quite a few Knights, so I hope you are happy to see it on its way. Anyway, so as this is the first video of this series, I'm going to talk through just quickly about what these videos are going to be going through. If you've seen the Wizard and Archer ones, you know the format of it, but if you haven't, here's how it's going to work. So the first 6 videos, I will go through 3 active skills in each video. I'm then going to talk about what those skills do, what they do in reality, like where you actually use them, what the skills roughly add, and kind of how many skill points to put into them. That should hopefully, those 6 videos are designed to be short. They're 5 to 10 minutes. At least I plan to make them 5 to 10 minutes, and they'll just quickly give you an idea of what each of the skills do, so that you then know kind of what's going on the class. That then sets up very nicely for the 7th video, which is going to be talking all about builds. Now this video is going to be long. It's a presentation, there's not going to be any gameplay in it. It's going to be probably about an hour long, where I'm going to go through putting in your skill points, how you're going to start setting up your build, putting the different skill points of the different skills, what you need, and then also other things about using the class, so how you can use certain skills together to create great damage output, how you can use certain skills together to create great defense, and then lastly going through various builds at certain levels of skill points and how to set that up on your hotbar, those 10 skills and stuff, talking about PvE, PvP, all that kind of stuff. So it's like really going into great depth on how you're going to use the class and how you're going to set yourself up to play the game. Now in these first 7 videos I will not be talking about skill runes pretty much at all. I'm just going to mention a few where it's like really relevant, but these 7 videos are meant to stand the test of time. So as more skill runes come out, I won't have to redo these videos. If you see these videos in a few years time, they should still work, because unless they've really changed the way a skill works, you should be able to draw from the knowledge or the information in these videos to then understand whatever's been added at a later time. The 8th video is where I'm going to go through skill runes. So if you watched my video, the best skill runes for all classes, that I made kind of quickly ages ago, this 8th video is going to be redoing that for Knight, going through all the skill runes, all the ones worthy of note. That is going to be a similar style to the 7th video, which is going to be a presentation probably about an hour long, again, where I'm going to go through all the different information that you could be interested in with regards to skill runes. Now if you've seen my Wizard or Archer, you'll know the format of that will be basically one big table where I will identify every single useful skill rune and which are the best ones for each skill, what are the ones to kind of pay note to that it doesn't matter which build you are, you still want to use them, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be talking through that table and then going to be showing them in the game. In the Archer video I did a slightly different format, which I'm going to continue in this one, where I will show each of the skills, each of the skill runes in the game, the good ones that I note, so you can actually see what they do, and I will talk a little bit about them maybe there. So that's what that's going to be. That video is going to be going through, and overall, between all these 8 videos, you should then learn everything you want to know about the class, how to use it, and be very well set up for the game. So a couple of things to note before we get into the bulk of this video. Firstly, in every single video in this series, I link my active and advanced skills guide. This is a guide on the forum where I go through all the skills for each class, and you can see the Knight skills here. I list the numbers for how many skill points putting in, what it does to the damage, the cooldown, mana cost, all that stuff. So if you want to see the numbers, go here. I'm not going to be going through all these numbers in the videos. I also give a great amount of detail, which is very similar to what I'm going to be saying in these videos. This is basically the video format of this guide. And so if you want to see more information, have a little read, then this is the guide to come check out. Additionally, for the presentation style videos, the last 2, they are extremely long videos, and for that reason in the description there are links to certain points in the video, so you can navigate around, and if you want to refer to it at a later time coming back to the video, then you can go to the bits you want to see. So with all that done and said, we can now get into this video. This first video I'm going to be going through the 3 skills, Maim, Cleave and Charge. These 3 skills are pretty simple in what they do, and they're pretty cool. I do like the knight skills a lot, so I'm going to be enjoying these videos as I make them. So maim is your pretty much bog standard single target attacking move. It's got it also knocks down the enemy to the ground, but that doesn't really work on any of the bigger enemies. So ultimately what this is doing is it's a reasonable cooldown skill, only 5 seconds, and it's doing big damage to one target. Simple as that. And when it comes to scurryings, I may as well mention them now, they basically just add damage. They kind of add a bit of, they change it to, some of them change it to stun, some of them, maybe they're slow in there, I don't know. I can't really remember off the top of my head right now, but basically it's big damage to one target. So let's go up and show it in some combat. Apologies for any visual glitches you're seeing right now. There'll be little cuts and stuff. It's just my screen recorder, I can never quite get it working properly, and I'm sorry for that, but you'll just have to try and look past that. So anyway, let's have a look at maim. Let's use it on this big guy here. So bang, that's it there. You do a little jump into the air, a little slam down. I'm going to put a cooldown potion on just so I can use it more frequently. So it's going to slam the ground like that and hit the enemy. It's not too long an animation, but it is definitely an animation length. It's not going to just whip out instantly. So that's maim for you there. The main thing to really talk about on this skill is how many skill points to put in it, because that's where it gets a little bit interesting. So with 10 skill points you get this great damage, you get the nice cooldown as well, and the mana cost is not an issue at all. Getting it to 99 is going to double this cooldown. Now that's the kind of issue, and a lot of people like to put extra skill points into the skill because it does such high damage, and in PvP being able to do high damage to a single target is exceptionally strong. So there's a big argument you can make to pushing this all the way to 99. However, I'm not so much a fan when you're pushing the cooldown up, because when you have such a great damage skill that you want to be using it quite frequently. And so that's where it kind of comes down to personal taste. So looking here at the scurryings, I do need to mention, because most of the scurryings add roughly the same kind of damage as the attack damage here, at least the ones that are out at the moment, except for Flowing Blades, which gives 420% water, as well as some static damage there. So if you're using Flowing Blades, if you're using a water build and you're doing loads of water damage, getting this skill up with skill points is not going to increase the damage output by so much, because most of your damage is coming from that elemental damage in the scurrying. But anyway, that's more of a side note. Generally talking, this skill, I can see the argument for putting it beyond 10 out of 99. Personally, I like the low cooldown, but it is definitely a skill which you could push up to about 8 seconds cooldown. I wouldn't go beyond 8 seconds. While going to 99, there is, I go into this detail in the forum guide if you want to go read it there and get the specifics, but basically if you take it to 64 you get 8 seconds cooldown. This is kind of what I'd recommend if you want to push it high. You can see the attack damage gets huge. There is one argument to put it to 99, that is if you stack up all the different damage buffs in one go, you even use the skill book for an extra boost of damage, you can turn this into a great one-shot skill. It's also good for taking out AFK people in PvP, so having a lot of damage on it in one skill use can be really useful for those instant one-shots on AFK people, and just generally whacking a massive amount of health off someone in one go, which is really good for finishing someone off. But anyway, with all that said, I think probably on balance I would put it at 8 seconds cooldown. I think that's the kind of best of both worlds, where you can use this skill frequently enough and do a lot of damage with it. So anyway, the next skill to talk about is Cleave. So Cleave is a very cool skill, and it's an intrinsic, actually I'm not sure if intrinsic is the word, but it's the most important skill for builds in the past, at least, for damage output. The reason being is it's got a 2-second cooldown, and the damage from it is surprisingly high, as well as being area of effect. So there are various other skills and scurryings on the class, which I will go through later, that you pull enemies towards you. Now as a knight you can tank almost everything if you're using your skills correctly, so putting things next to you is not so much an issue, and being able to then cleave them over and over and over and over is an excellent way to clear out lots of small enemies, or just generally any enemies, because the cleave is so strong. So cleave is one of your major damage skills that you're going to be using a lot. For that reason, pushing it beyond 10 out of 99 is a little bit iffy, because it does push up the cooldown. So anyway, little talk about scurryings first. They, just like maim, they pretty much just add damage on. Dual Scythe here is the best one that's out, and they add like nearly 200% damage, elemental damage on. And if you've got your elemental stats high, the majority of the damage will be coming from the Skuruns, so pushing the cooldown isn't so great. But because the cooldown is so low, it is possible to push this up, so it has like a 3-second cooldown. I think it's like about 50 something, and it still is frequent enough, especially when you've got a cooldown potion active. Sorry if I'm being a little bit confusing there. Basically, this skill, 10 out of 99, is great. You put a Skurun in it, it does great damage. You can use it really frequently, you can spam it like crazy. However, there is an argument you can make to push it beyond that. I would recommend nowhere beyond 3-second cooldown, which is around about 55 or something like that. And then at that point you maybe have a more optimal kind of cleave for when you have a cooldown potion active. I would say also the reason why I'm saying maybe do that, most skills I don't say to do that, but because on Knight especially, lots of these other skills buffs and stuff you want to be using, having such a low cooldown skill isn't necessarily what you want, because you can't even use it that frequently. So actually, my personal taste of the skills that I have on the class and the way I use them, 3-second cooldown is what works for me. However, you may want to lower cooldown if you want to spam this more frequently. I hope that's clear enough in the way I was saying it. And Cleave here, great skill. It does a lovely hitting the enemies, hitting lots of enemies. So anyway, that's Cleave for you. The next skill to talk about is Charge. Now this skill has a little bit of a weird history to it. It used to be for damage. It's not really for damage anymore at all. It's very useful in farming, extremely useful in farming, because you can get around the map. So the way this works is you click a target and basically you will rush to it. The cooldown on it's pretty low, so you can charge to things very frequently. You can get through a map extremely quickly. Now, Charge doesn't just have the use of moving through a map quickly, it is also for dodging attacks and stuff, because if you have a boss fighting you, you want to be sat next to the boss, attacking the boss loads, doing loads of damage to it, and then from time to time it will use a skill which is like, oh no, this will actually kill me if it hits me, so maybe there'll be a little enemy off to the side which you can charge to get out of combat. That's something which I personally do a lot because I play Wizard, and that's how I use Teleport. However, it is one of the uses for Charge, which is actually pretty good. With all that said, Charge is not a skill that you want to push beyond 10 out of 99. It's mainly for that mobility rather than anything else, and the damage from it is not important, so you want the low cooldown on it. The one thing to mention is the Skurun. So most of the Skuruns don't do much, they just add a bit of damage on here. You can see Lightning Rush just adds some damage, Empowered Meteor Dash adds some damage, creates a bit of fire around. The cool one, which is kind of what revamped the skill and gave it a lot of use, is Sparkling Gift. What this does is when you hit the enemy, it then pulls all enemies into that place. So I mentioned just a minute or two ago about Cleave, pulling enemies together being a big tactic to then cleave them. Well, Sparkling Gift is one of those. So it doesn't really show it in this because I'm one-shotting the enemies, but you charge into something and then all surrounding enemies get pulled into it, and you can then cleave them or do any other area effect skill. It also does reasonable damage, but where this comes in a lot of use is even when you're fighting a boss right next to the boss. If there's some enemies nearby and stuff, you can just suddenly charge the boss. You can charge something that you're right next to, it doesn't matter, and it will pull those enemies in, so you're not going to be dealing with loads of enemies attacking you because they all come in and they all die to whatever you're doing right by you. So that's really where I think this skill comes into use outside of farming. Obviously farming, it does the rush stuff. In more tough combat, you've got the dodging stuff, which it can come in a bit of use, and putting enemies in. So the putting enemies in is the primary use that you will be using a lot of the time with a Sparkling Gift Skurun. If they've got other Skuruns in the future which do other cool stuff, then obviously use those, but Sparkling Gift is really where it has its use now, and you pull those enemies in, and then occasionally you might need to dodge something when you can charge out. In PvP, it's obviously brilliant for charging two enemies to try and get into some combat, and when you charge at them as well, it stuns them for 1.5 seconds, so they even struggle to get away from you, which is perfect. So that's these three skills. going through them. I hope it's cleared up everything about those skills. You now know what's going on with them, and I hope to see you in the next video where I'm going to be going through the next 3 skills. Thanks very much for watching.